In 2023, I was tired of being single. My friends pushed me to try online dating, and so finally I downloaded Tinder. And I was just about to give up when I saw him. Chiseled jaw, well groomed, exactly my type physically. In fact, it almost seemed too good to be true. He was that good looking. So naturally, I swiped right. And later that day, he messaged. We messaged for hours. He was incredibly charming. And then we decided to have a phone call. Well, within the first 5 minutes of this phone call, he admitted that he was a recovering alcoholic. It was a struggle for him some days, but he was doing it. So I listened without judgment. And then it got to the end of the phone call, where he told me he couldn't drive because he'd had his license taken away. Now, as I said, he was so good looking. And that kind of overtook everything. And so stupidly, I said to him, that's fine. I love driving anyway. That should have been my first red flag, because I had no idea that I had just signed up to be his personal chauffeur. So a few days later, he asked to meet up. And I had a hospital appointment right by his work, so he suggested I pop in. My anxiety was through the roof, but I needed to meet this man. So I agreed, and that was my first big mistake. I pulled up and he walked out. Broad shoulders, tight work trousers, and he smelled amazing. He wrapped me up in a cuddle that honestly made me forget where I was supposed to be going. And I didn't realise it at the time, but this was just the beginning of his love bombing. We continued to talk every day. Messages, phone calls. I was falling. And then it was about 2 weeks later, he called me and he asked me to pick him up from work. I obliged. So I went and got him. And when he got in the car, something was different to the man that I'd been talking to. It was like there was no space for me in the conversation. Every time I tried to say something, he would speak over me, and in the end, I just stopped trying. When we got to his place, he invited me in. I did actually feel a little bit uncomfortable at this point because I felt like the person sitting next to me was different. But I'm a people pleaser, and I couldn't say no. And I did still really like this man, and he was still absolutely gorgeous. So I said yes. He introduced me to his housemates. And then he left me with them, with these complete strangers, whilst he went and had a shower. For half an hour. I wanted to get up and leave. But 30 minutes later, when he walked back in that room, my stomach was doing flips. He looked better than I'd ever even seen him. And I knew at that point that I was really catching feelings for this man. I forgot to mention, when he was in the shower, one of his housemates said to me, "You do know he's got bipolar, right?" I didn't. And I should have been alarmed that he hadn't addressed this with me, because we was almost kind of in a relationship at this point. But all I wanted to do was support him. And there is my second big mistake. As I was leaving, he took my walking stick from me. He took complete control of my body. He spun me round and pulled me into his chest and then kissed me. And as we came to the end of our embrace, he asked me, "Do you always use a walking stick?" So I explained to him that I have a chronic illness and I probably would need the walking stick for the rest of my life. It was at this point that his reaction just threw me. There was no anything. He looked down at the floor, changed the conversation, acted like he didn't even hear what I said about my illness, and just nothing. I know that that should have been my wake-up call, but it wasn't. It didn't take long for me to become trauma bonded to this man. The daily calls, the affection, the love bombing, it really worked. He kept asking for lifts, prying me for information every time we were in the car. It felt more like an interrogation than a car ride between a couple. The red flags were piling up at this point, but I still couldn't see them. This man was obsessed with his looks. Gym, steroids, sunbeds daily. He lied constantly about his work, about his qualifications, about where he was. Literally everything you can think of, he lied about it. And he had such an addictive personality, always chasing that next high. Looking back, I can see it so clearly. But at the time, I was the one who was hooked. Comment for part 2. As time went on, his bipolar disorder became more and more obvious. When he was up, he was really up, spending hundreds of pounds on clothes and aftershave. But when he was down, he would buy illegal diazepam to suppress his rage. But it didn't stop him from questioning me over every little thing. Who I was texting, where I was, what I'm doing. I soon realised that this guy was still using dating apps. He was keeping them hidden in a secret folder on his phone. The same phone that was always on silent and face down, because when he wasn't with me, he was with someone else. He was a sex addict, a cocaine addict, and constantly keeping his options open. By now, I was seeing him nearly every day, picking him up from work, taking him home, going on long drives. He smoked weed constantly, and I was always having to pull over so he could light up or drive with the roof down so the smell didn't linger. And I thought that was bad enough. But then things started to get really dark. He started masturbating in my car regularly. And it didn't matter where we was. It could be at the side of a road, in a parking lot, anywhere. And even worse still, he pressured me into doing it for him in these public places, even though he knew I didn't want to. That April, I had a hysterectomy. I was in hospital for 3 days. And for those 3 days, he was gone. No support, no visits, no phone calls, nothing. Because to him, I was out of the picture for a little while so he could go and sleep with whoever he wants. And I thought that was bad. But then I got home and things got so much worse. See, I was still healing and still bleeding, but he didn't care. He forced me to do the deed, causing me unbearable pain and bursting all of my stitches. I ended up back in hospital every time, and every time he refused to come with me. At this point, I knew he was toxic, but I kept the truth from my friends and my family because I was ashamed. I'd convinced myself that being with somebody this attractive was going to make me happy, was going to fix everything. And I'm so embarrassed to say that I was shallow and I was lying to myself. Meanwhile, he was stealing from me. Money, medication, anything he could get his hands on. My nerve blockers, my sleeping pills, all gone. And when I confronted him, he was raging, flipping the blame onto me, saying that my fibro made me forgetful, that I was confused. You know, classic gaslighting. Then came a moment that absolutely shook my world. I took him to a psychiatric appointment that he had, and the doctor looked me dead in the eye and he told me, "You're not just his girlfriend. You are also his mother, his housekeeper, and his carer." And you know what? He was right. I was all of those things. But by then, I was in too deep. He needed a place to live. I had my own place. He love-bombed me, made me feel like I was the most special person in the world, made me feel like he missed me when we weren't together. But really, he just needed a roof over his head. Because nobody falls in love quicker than a narcissist who needs a place to stay. I don't have much money, but he found it easy enough to rely on me and my money because he couldn't hold down a job. He was constantly taking breaks to go and masturbate in the toilets. He couldn't be told what to do. And not only that, all of his colleagues would laugh at him behind his back because he proposed to every single girlfriend that he had. And yet I still wasn't seeing the full picture. His parents never made it any better. They would praise him for any little thing. And when I say praise him, I mean bow down, kissing his feet kind of praise. Because they sent him away to boarding school, so they always felt like they had something to make up for. I guess blind praise was the only way they knew how. But it made things worse because it made him believe that he was God. And he actually said that to me a few times. He told me that he's God and he can do no wrong. So I was now at the point where I felt like I couldn't leave him in my house on his own, because I knew that he would take something. And it's not just anything, it's my money, it's my medication, it's things that I need. And I couldn't address it with him because he would blow up, he would deny it, so it was pointless. And then he started showering with me. Not out of love or care. I didn't have a choice. He started showering with me. He would make me wash him. He would make me do things that I didn't want to do, still very, very sore from my operation. It was then that I realised that this wasn't love. I was trapped, and I felt like I was drowning. Comment for part 3. He eventually found work. And you know what? It was a good job. Good money in the building trade, which is what he wanted to do. But it was 90 miles away. So of course that meant he then started threatening to not go, to not take the job unless I came with him. I now had a decision to make. Do I continue fronting his lifestyle, funding everything, when I don't have much money myself? Or do I go with him? So I agreed to stay down there with him Monday to Friday. We would stay there during the week and we would come back home to my house on the weekend. I mean, as long as I had a bed to sleep in, what was the difference, right? It was uncomfortable at my house, it was uncomfortable there. Anywhere I was with him, it was uncomfortable. So what difference did it make? I agreed to go. It was only a few weeks in when I could see his new plan panning out. He kept saying little things to me like, "You're not happy here. I can see you're not happy here." Noticed he'd started drinking again as well, despite all of the doctor's warnings that the next drink could be fatal. He was still doing it. And then came the day when he no longer had a job, because I wasn't happy there. He left so that we could go back home and I could be happy again. I saw it happening. And he's right, I wasn't happy there, but I'm not happy at home either because he's there. That's the point. His birthday was quickly approaching, and I was already planning my escape. But now that he had started drinking again, now that he was making himself ill again, I mean, his skin was yellow, he looked like he had jaundice, something was seriously wrong. And I was scared, because as much as this man had damaged, abused, and hurt me, I still had love for him, and I was scared to leave him in such a vulnerable state. That was until I discovered my new batch of medication. Half of it was already missing. After all of the conversations, after all of the arguments, after me crying and begging, they were missing again. So I bided my time, because I knew I couldn't say anything to him face to face. I knew that that was not going to end well for me. I had a hair appointment this particular day, and I had saved up for months and months and months to afford this hair appointment because, as you can imagine, I had a leech draining me financially. And today was the day. It was here, and I was so excited. I was not going to let him dampen my mood. I went to the hair salon, and whilst I was there, I sent him a text. I told him I knew about the medication, and I told him I wanted out. It was done, over, finished. Well, about half an hour later, he came storming into the hair salon demanding my car keys. I refused. I felt brave, if I'm honest with you, because I had people there. I had people around me watching this. It's not like we were both at home on our own where I would have easily just handed my car keys over because he was a very intimidating guy. But here I didn't have to. I had people. I kept my cool as I told him no. I stayed very calm because I was not about to cause a scene. And I was hoping that he would just go. But of course, He waited outside. We got in my car together to go home, and he was seething. I was shaking with nerves, trying to prepare myself for the onslaught, the gaslighting, the shouting. It was his usual pattern. The anger, the tears, and then being the victim, of course. This man had a way of making me question my own reality, question my own thoughts. I knew that I needed to get out, but I was even now questioning that. Maybe I'm the problem. Maybe it's me. One thing was for sure. He was tightening his grip, and I was running out of time to break free. I am going to upload part 4, the final part, right now. Things were awful at this point, as they always were when he was out of work. I guess I just became his human, verbal and emotional punch bag. It was his cure for boredom, wasn't it? To take it out on me. One day in particular, which is a day I will never forget because it was the day I found the strength to leave. We were having an argument that was escalating to a place that it hadn't been before. I was scared. I was backing down. He wasn't. So I intentionally pocket dialed my parents. And within 10 minutes, my mum was here telling him to back off. And you know what? He did. And that was the first time I'd ever seen that happen. She made him call a taxi. And unfortunately, that taxi was going to be 45 minutes. So I let him stay in my house for a further 45 minutes. And I know that you think that's mad. But if I let him walk out that door, how do I know where he's going to go? How do I know if he gets in the taxi? How do I know if he goes and hides somewhere for the next time I leave my house? I had my parents there. I felt safer, and I wanted to watch him walk into the cab. I needed to watch him drive off away from me. So I let him wait in the house. I even made conversation with him. He passed out on my sofa. The taxi wouldn't take him. So I kept him talking, I kept him awake, and I just needed him to go. And then the taxi turned up. And he left. But it doesn't stop there, does it? Because physically he might not be here, but mentally he was still tormenting me. I could still hear his voice in my head. I could still feel his restrictions around me. I eventually blocked him on all platforms. But that didn't stop him. I had to get the police involved, and I had to get a restraining order because he was stalking me. He was doing everything within his power to make my life a continued misery. But I am in a better place now. I sought therapy and realised that the emotional toll had left me with PTSD. But the therapy and having no contact with him were my steps towards healing from his narcissistic abuse. So if you've read the caption under this video, you will know that this isn't my story. This story actually belongs to a lady called Kelly. What she's currently trying to do is raise awareness for narcissistic abuse. Now, obviously, this topic is extremely triggering and extremely sensitive. And I think the main message here is that you're not alone. There are a lot of big organisations who can offer help and advice, but if that feels too big and too scary right now, Kelly wants you to know that her inbox is always open, so I have tagged her below this video. And even if it's just to chat, just to relate, or for some advice on how she got out of her situation, her inbox is open, guys.